Welcome to Politics News Wolf US channel. The war in Ukraine has put NATO on alert. Ukraine's allies, which have been supporting the Russian invaders since the beginning of the war, continue to take their precautions against the possible Russian threat. Finally, NATO countries conducted air exercises over the political North Atlantic Alliance countries held military air exercises over the Baltic region. During maneuvers in which the United States participated, aviation practiced repelling to attack of an enemy of equal strength. NATO countries sent 4th and 5th generation fighters to the exercises. Exercises were held over the Baltic states with the Netherlands. F-35s introduced Poland F-16s and the USA F-15s among the part. According to the legend of the exercises, the forces of the airborne forces responded to the attack of complex enemy whose strength was not inferior to the forces of the alliance. The military said in a statement, it was working on tactics, techniques, and procedures aimed at repelling threats in contentious airspace. The Joint Ground Air Support Group of the Estonian Armed Forces supported two aircraft by providing real-time information on target. The largest military exercises in the history of the country had begun in Turkey. Previously, the United States and Israel began the largest joint military exercises. Meanwhile, the latest situation of the Russian Wagner Group, which took an active role on the Russian front in the war in Ukraine, is deplorable. The chief of the Wagner mercenaries acknowledged that Russia was facing magma resistance. Again, Prego admitted that Russian troops were engaged in a fierce battle to take the Ukrainian city of Und. Prian, head of Russia's Wagner mercenary group, said Russian forces must capture the Ukrainian strategic city of Bmo to continue their war campaign, but are facing fierce resistance from Ukraine. In a rare public interview with a Russian military correspondent on Friday, Prego said Russia must set clear objectives in its nearly a year-long war against Ukraine, namely to firmly establish its presence in eastern Ukraine or move forward to take over more of the country. Said it should. He said that the complete takeover of Bakhmut is key to these. Prego said Und is need so that our troops can move freely. Why is it called a meat grinder? Cause the Ukrainian army is sending more and more units. Wagner mercenaries, many of whom were conscripted from prisons in Russia, played a major role in the war in Ukraine, especially when they captured the town of Sodar near Bakhmut last month. The city that has endured mounts of fighting and shelling and is known by both as the meat. The Wagner chief who took Bmo said, "It's probably too early to say we are getting close. There are many ways to exit and less to enter. The Ukrainian soldiers are well trained and unlike any big city, it is impossible to take it." Hat on the Wagner chief is also very good. "We manage," he had it, referring to the Soviet era named Bmo, used by Moscow. "We must first take Artyomov quietly, and then we can say loudly and clearly that we have taken." The UK Defence Ministry said Wagner's forces had advanced 2 to 3 kilometers north of Mont since Tuesday, a rapid advance in a battle where the front lines had barely moved for months. A Ukrainian military analyst said the Wagner fighters are now directing the main western access route to Bakhmut. Although supplies are still passing through. The British ministry also said Russian forces had made some advances near Wada. A Ukrainian held for that is a cornerstone between the southern and eastern. However, it added limited Russian gains, possibly at a high cost, including at least 30 armored vehicles abundant in a failed offensive. Military analyst, OZ, said that as Russia deployed more and more troops to besiege the city, the situation around Bakhmut remains arguably the most difficult situation Ukrainian forces have faced. Zano said in an online interview, "The region south of Und is very difficult sector, and the city itself remains the hottest spot on the front right now." Bad news from the Russian Wagner Group comes to mind are the Wagner Group's days in Ukraine. Number. He brought his question recently. The Wagner Group, founded by Russian businessman, why Prego was seen by the Kremlin as a key tool in the war launched by Vladimir Putin in Ukraine. In January, Prego's and claimed responsibility for the capture of Sodar, a small salt mining town in the Esk region in eastern Ukraine. However, the Wagner Group failed to make significant progress in the nearby eastern industrial city of ECMO, where it had been focusing its efforts for 6 months. Beginning in the number of 2022, Prigozhin is believed to have recruited as many as 50,000 prisoners from Russia's extensive prison system for Putin's war, luring them with pardons and cash incentives from the Kremlin in exchange for 6-month service in Ukraine. But now he's setting up the convict pool for war. As many have learned of the high deaths rate among conscripted prisoners. Ol Nova, head of Russia behind bars at charity advocating for the rights of prison, said that over the 50,000 convicts constricted in the late January, 40,000 were either dead or missing, and only 10,000 were still fighting in Ukraine. Recent reports showed that the Wagner Group resorted to more merit-in practices to round up convicts, threatening detainees with new criminal cases and being placed in solitary confinement if they refused to part. Making a surprise announcement on Thursday, Prigozhin claimed that the paramilitary unit no longer enlists Russian prisoners for war. Prigozhin said in a social account, which he owns, the conscription of prisoners by the private military company, Wagner, has completely stopped. We are now fulfilling all our obligations to those who work for us. Former Russian commander Igor Ico, also known as Igor Geek, immediately responded to the statement claiming that the Wagner Group stays in Ukraine were numbered, and that the order to end to detention came from the Kremlin itself. Igor Geek said, "I believe an order from Abal caused the termination of the hiring. And after a while, it'll seriously affect Wagner's ability to successfully attack Hayton from one position to another, as is currently the case near Blackout." He said in a statement on a social media channel. Erkin and Prigozhin have recently been a public squabble, as the Wagner Group has failed to make significant progress in eastern Ukraine. Russian Minister of Defense procures convicts. Prigozhin's statement on Thursday came amid recent reports that Russia's defense ministry is recruiting detain. Roman Nova told the newspaper that Prigozhin stopped recruiting workers in Russian prisons on February 1, and representatives of the defense ministry began collecting comics in at least 2 panel colonies in Russia's Volgograd and Kava regions. According to Roman Nova, who fled Russia to Berlin in 2017, Russian Federal Penitentiary Service employees who compile lists of potential recruits now say it's the defense ministry, not the Wagner Group, that recruits prisoners for. Romano said that the defense ministry has long recruited detainees, but it does so very selectively. Recently, however, he has become more active in the recruitment and says, "We see prisoners being dispatched from the departmental defense every day. The number of people recruited by the Ministry of Defense so far is small, about 500. They offer the same conditions that Wagner proposes except for one thing. The Department of Defense emphasizes that there will be no extrajudicial killings." The Wagner Group made headlines in November following the execution of 55-year-old the Afghani Nguyen, a former Russian prisoner, who was enlisted in July and captured by Ukrainian forces in September. Vladimir Putin, a Russian human rights activist and head of the Anti-Corruption Project, a prisoner rights group, previously told Newsweek that executions and torture were common practices within the Wagner Group, and many were killed for refusing to do so. Roman Nova said the Wagner Group's extrajudicial executions greatly frightened prison. Thank you for watching the video. If you find it useful, please comment and share the video for us. It will make our channel more known. See you in the following videos. Thank you very much.